response to the previous speaker's claim and as support for my partner, I will be enforcing that athletes do require additional money to pay for schooling. College athlete scholarships do not cover the true costs of university attendance. These true costs come in the form of textbooks, supplies, meal plans, transportation, housing, required student government fees, and required materials for classes. According to research conducted by the National College Players Association, the average scholarship shortfall, or out-of-pocket expenses, for each full scholarship athlete was approximately $3,222 per player during the 2010 to 2011 school year. Again, this is the average cost for a student receiving an all-expenses-paid scholarship to a university. These costs don't sound like much, but whenever a student-athlete is unable to work and alleviate their debt, the students fall financial victim, and many of these students are forced to leave school, as pointed out by my partner. As supplementary data to prove that many NCAA athletes financially struggle because of scholarship funding holes, the NCPA, or National College Players Association, found that the room and board provisions in a full scholarship leave 85% of players living on campus and 86% of players living off campus living below the federal poverty line. Moving on, I would like to reinforce my partner's claim that student-athletes deserve to be reimbursed for sponsors and merchandising. Although our claim seeks only to provide a small additional stipend to cover student costs, it's worthy to note what the fair market value of a student-athlete is, if the NCAA ever agreed to compensate players proportionally to the amount of money they generate directly based on performance, and their performance. According to the NCPA, this fair market value of the average FBS football player and basketball player was $121,000 and $265,000 respectively. This salary is significantly higher than the average scholarship shortfall we're looking to have covered, again averaging $3,222 per student athlete. This number reflects a fair salary based upon how much money the student-athlete generates for the NCAA and their respective schools. We can get a general idea of how much money student-athletes generate for these numbers to be considered fair salaries. Moving on, within this claim, student-athletes are also generating a significant portion of money for the NCAA and their schools with TV deals and merchandising deals. The NCPA reports that the NCAA are receiving an average of approximately $784 million in new revenue thanks to recently signed TV contracts. Based on these current NCAA rules, student-athletes are not allowed to receive any portion of these new TV deals, even if their image and likeness is used. Lastly, on this topic of generating income, NCAA athletes are also generating a significant amount of income in other forms of media that use their name and image but aren't being compensated. Each year, Xbox 360 and PlayStation 3 consoles release the latest NCAA sports video games. In these video games, NCAA athletes' images, likeness, and names are used in order to generate more income. But just, how much money do these games generate? We find, based on video game sales records found on PastaPadre.com, for the opening month of July, NCAA Football 11 sold 368,000 copies on the 360 and 298,800 on the PlayStation 3. In total, this represents a move of 8% compared to the NCAA Football 10. So we gamers know that a new video game costs $60 as a new release, which extends well beyond this first month of sales. Therefore, we can extrapolate these games generated $40 million and $40,008,000 in new video game sales. This number that was calculated excludes sales past the first month, any used video game sales, product placement in the game, advertising for the game, rentals, and sales taxes collected on this video game. This is for one video game alone and does not include the NCAA basketball video game release. This is only for football. So, as my final claim, I would like to establish that student-athletes struggling with poverty is not an isolated issue. Even in the three most successful schools with profitable programs, student-athletes are still living below the federal poverty line because of scholarship shortfalls and other costs. We observed this pattern of poverty in University of Texas football program, Duke's basketball program, and the combined basketball and football programs of the University of Florida. As found by a joint study conducted by the NCAA and Drexel University's Department of Sports Management, the University of Texas's football players' fair market value was $500,000, but they lived $778 below the federal poverty line and had a scholarship shortfall of $3,624. This is the most successful football school, keep in mind. The next successful school in regards to basketball was Duke. And this report found that Duke basketball players were valued at over $1 million while living just $732 above the poverty line, but had a scholarship shortfall of $1,995, placing them back under the poverty line. And the combined programs of the University of Florida, which has the highest combined revenue of all the schools, these players, their scholarship funding holes left them living $2,250 below the federal poverty line, and had a scholarship shortfall of $3,190. So even in schools with the most successful football, basketball, and combined football and basketball programs, we find these student athletes involved are hardly making it by, if at all. In recap, I first established how student athletes do require additional funding based on the scholarship holes and additional costs. I then shed light on how student athletes are generating a significant amount of income with performances, television deals, and video games. And lastly, I exposed how student athletes getting shortchanged on their scholarships occurs not only in the average sport program, but occurs in the top sport programs too.